All right. So the first question is, what do you think is important for teachers within your discipline, so social studies, to consider when designing literacy instruction?
I think that they have to know where their kids are coming from first. Like you said, like the textbook looks so easy, but knowing where the kids' reading levels are and what their background knowledge is, that type of thing is going to play into how much you have to differentiate and have different lessons going in your class, trying to scaffold for those kids who do need that support to get to that type of level. And knowing if they can actually like analyze those charts, maps, graphs, that type of thing. Even like you were talking about like the police blotter.
Yeah.
You know, going through this is how it's set up. What do you see? That type of thing that allows them then to get past that basic stuff and then do more higher level analysis.
Yeah, actually be able to analyze what it is they're looking at, not just be like, okay, what am I looking at?
Exactly. What am I supposed to do with this now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Was that enough info on that one
Yeah,
for you?
yeah,
Okay.
You're good. Is there anything that surprised you about what you had read from my reflections?
I don't think so. I think being the wife of a police officer, all of that stuff, when Randy first used to come home and talk about that type of stuff, it was like, oh, I never realized that, you know, because with him having a math and science background, he never took writing classes. So he basically at 30 years old had to teach himself how to do all of that stuff that he never focused on in school because that's not where he felt himself going.
Yeah.
And not even in social studies now, but I feel like with the new science curriculum that they're moving more towards that. And people being able to explain themselves and read, you know, not just do experiments and write up a lab report, but actually being able to pick things apart and explain themselves in a way that anybody can understand. So,
and it's like literacy isn't just for social studies and language arts, like it's for every discipline area, which I think we don't think about.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a lot of the younger teachers realize that, but it's the older ones because it's not the way that they were taught. Everything was compartmentalized. So you only did reading and writing in your English class. You did the math in your math class. They didn't make the
connection across all of them.
Yeah,
that makes sense. What types of texts and processes are necessary for students to be fluent in the literacy of social studies?
A lot of it comes down to academic vocabulary. Not only the stuff like they might end up seeing on the SAT or ACT, like some of those, you know, process words, but the actual vocabulary. And our district actually jumped on board with something called the Freyer model for vocabulary, which is a graphic organizer that has them working with what does it mean, what's the connotation of the word, what are examples. It almost seems very elementary.
Like breaking it down.
Yeah, but when you're throwing these ridiculously high level words in there, it really makes the kids think about it because they can't do, especially in history, because so much of it is looking at primary source documents and they're looking at these words from 300 or 400 years ago that aren't used anymore, at least not in common language, and they don't know what they mean. So teaching them how to break those down and process through those first. Like a lot of, have you guys done close reading type stuff?
Yeah.
So a lot of that type of stuff where they might be reading that text multiple times, but the first time through is looking for those words, defining them, understanding what they mean, chunking it down for meaning, and then going to overall understanding.
We actually learned about that in one of our language arts college classes too. So I was like, oh my gosh, so it's cool to actually see that that's being used in like even that level.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah. I do it with my honors kids, and like even in the AP US history class, they're doing that just to get the kids to stop skipping over stuff and guessing at the meaning of things and actually take the time to break it down to make meaning.
That makes sense. That's awesome. How might you change your instructional strategies or practices based on what you had read, if you would change anything? How would you get literacy maybe more involved in your classroom?
I think a big part of what you had in yours was that real life application, and that's really what we're striving to come up with in writing a new social studies curriculum. Give the kids things that they're interested in. So we do have kids who are interested in being police officers. I've got a couple that are talking about like getting into the airlines. Well, if we're going to be teaching them how to read charts, why does it just have to be a chart of North versus South in the Civil War? Why can't they look at other things like the police blotter, airlines, all the crap with the temperature, the air pressure, all of that kind of stuff, like to get the airplane off the ground and like teach them to analyze and use those literacy skills in something that they're interested in,
just besides
practices, just besides what the content says we have to teach them about specific things in history.
Yeah, that makes sense. How would you define literacy in social studies?
I don't think it's just reading. It's also the charts, the graphs, how to read a map, looking at data tables and being able to pull from that type of stuff too. A lot of people think it's just reading, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to give the kids multiple sources of information to gather their own opinion. It's not just going to be reading text. It's going to be looking at other stuff too.
Exactly. How is literacy different in social studies than from any other discipline?
I think social studies is versatile enough where it applies to everything. So there's aspects of math that you can incorporate into it, again, like going back to charts and that kind of stuff, how to analyze what's actually on the charts with historical content. You've got the reading aspect, you've got the writing aspect. It can encompass all other subject areas into what we do, and that flexibility is great because you're not going to be doing that in other subjects.
Exactly. Let's see if there's anything else. I'm pretty sure that's it. Let's see here. Yeah. Any other final thoughts on what you had read and how it might apply to your class specifically?
Well, I don't really use the textbook at all, ever.
That's great. That's what we want to hear.
Because that's what I tell the kids, that the textbook is one source, and what was put in there was decided on by a board of directors. They chose what to leave out, what to put in, and how long to have each individual part.
It's from one perspective.
Yes, exactly. So it's important that they understand, especially for when they get into college, or if they go a more technical route where they have manuals and that type of thing, to understand how to get through it and read it. However, it's more about finding and having the kids find those sources. So we're really actually working with them now on EBSCO and ERIC, the online databases, and how to use those, how to find educational journals and pick those apart, because that's what they're going to have to do when they get into college and are doing their research. And being able to look, it doesn't matter if it's song lyrics from the 1700s or if they're looking at a chart from 1945, that no matter what it is, even if they don't know the content, they know how to pick it apart and make sense of it.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of where we are going, and away from that textbook. Like I tell them, you're not going to bring the Declaration of Independence to class every day, so why would you bring your textbook every day?
Yeah.
It's a source just like anything else.
That's great. That's exactly what we want to hear.
Yeah.
We're talking about how it's still hard for many teachers to get away from the textbook, because that's how we were taught, and we tend to go back to how we were taught when we're teaching ourselves.
Yes.
So it's definitely hard to get away from it, but
and the rote memorization, there's so many teachers
they just drill it into their heads.
Yes.
And it's that's not how you learn.
And especially with our technology now, you can Google that stuff. So instead of being who is the 22nd president, how about, why was Cleveland our 22nd and 24th president? What happened? So they can Google who that was, but actually finding out what happened and why there was another guy in between, that's actually something that's higher level thinking skills.
Making it more inquiry based than just facts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there are still those teachers out there, hopefully approaching retirement.
Hopefully. No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, perfect. Thank you.